Hello, students. This is Mr. Martyron speaking to you. You guys should have out your Great War class notes. Title, Great War class notes. We're going to study in this video, part 1, Unification, 1880 to 1914. In this video, we're going to answer questions 1, 2, and 3. We're going to talk about the unification of Germany. We're going to talk about nationalism threatening the old empire. And we're going to talk about trouble in Russia. All right, so take a minute. Make sure you have this packet out. It will follow along with our PowerPoint. So before we start talking about the conflict of 1914, we have to first talk about the players. So we've got to talk about the unification of Germany. So what I need you guys to understand is that prior to 1871, Germany consisted of hundreds of tiny kingdoms. And these kingdoms were usually self-governed. But around 1870, 1871, two men come along. Wilhelm IV of Prussia and a gentleman pictured in your notes, Otto von Bismarck, they work together and struggle to unify Germany. It's kind of the idea of safety in numbers. So Bismarck will use a policy called blood and iron. And he believed in the idea of what he called realpolitik, or realistic politics based on the needs of the state. The idea is that these policies change over time. So let me explain. The idea of blood and iron is simply this. Blood is the labor force. Iron is indicative to what movement that we studied? Well, that's right, the Industrial Revolution. So blood and iron, Bismarck is really tapping into German pride and loyalty and nationalism and industrialization to develop their country. And the idea of realpolitik is simply the idea of using a policy and having a policy in place, but that policy changes over time. For example, Bismarck persecuted the Catholics for several years under his reign. When it turned out that it wasn't to his liking and he was losing political power and popularity, he reversed his opinion. We call it today flip-flopping. He reverses his opinion on the Catholics and kind of opens up, becomes a little bit more tolerant to them. That increases his popularity in Germany. The final thing that you need to know about unification in Germany is that Bismarck will end up leading several small wars with Austria, France, Denmark, and as a result, he reclaims German territory and German power. And there, the engraving of Bismarck there has him in the traditional military helmet that a lot of people will associate with the Germans. And guys, remember, this is 1871, so it's several years before, almost 40 years before the German Third Reich under Adolf Hitler comes to power. All right. And here we have a map of what Germany looked like prior to unification. It's a map showing all the hundreds of little kingdoms that were throughout Germany, and they all get unified under Bismarck. And there's the map of the unified Germany. All right. The other thing we need to talk about is nationalism in the old empire, and this is question number 2 in your notes. Number 1, the empire that we're going to talk about now is the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and they were a diverse group. They were diverse. They were a dual monarchy, but they also had thousands of little ethnic groups within their empire, and all these ethnic groups wanted their own country. So these diverse ethnic groups really threatened to break away from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. The second thing is that these Slavic and ethnic groups felt more loyalty towards Russia, and in some ways, they wanted their own separate country. Slovaks wanted their own countries, Albanians wanted their own countries, Bosnians wanted their own country, Serbs wanted their own country. And this is going to be a tremendous problem as unification goes through. The final piece of the puzzle here is that the Ottoman Empire, which we've talked about, is finally in decline. Because of the age of imperialism, this territory is now declining and falling to the wayside. So here we have a map. Here is Austria, and here is the Ottoman Empire. Here is Germany, and down here is Italy. Watch what happens in the next slide. After unification, we have a country of Italy completely unified. We have Germany solidifying its stronghold and expanding its territory. But notice the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire have now broken up. Austria-Hungary is a very tiny, powerful country, but the Ottoman Empire is broken up into Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Bosnia. So there's going to be tremendous problems in this area of the world. And what we're going to talk about next is we're going to talk about the Russian Empire. And the problem with Russia is that Russia, big Russia over here, big Russia felt that it was their duty to defend these tiny little countries. So if someone messes with Romania or Serbia or Bulgaria or Albania, Russia is going to have their back. And that's going to be a big problem with the alliance system. All right, so troubles in Russia, and this is number 3. So we know that Russia was economically underdeveloped. It was one of the last countries in Europe to really industrialize, and that's because the government really mismanaged their finances, and they didn't have a system of government in place that allowed the economy to develop freely. The Tsar governed with an iron fist, and he used the secret police to really arrest or threaten anyone, or arrest or kill anyone that was a threat to his power. And then the final point, number 3, is that Russia felt it was its duty to defend all the Slavic people around the world. All right, continuing forward. Okay, we'll talk about the alliance system in Europe in just a second, but now I'm going to talk about the causes of World War I. And this is number 4 under part 2, the players. So for number 1 under number 4, you write down M. Number 2 is A. Number 3 is N. Number 4 is I. And number 5 is A, mania. And I'm going to give you the appropriate words in just a second. So number 1 under number 4, the first cause for World War I is militarism. So you guys want to write that word down in your notes, and I'm going to give you the definition in just a second. Number 2 are the alliance systems. Number 3 is nationalism. Number 4 is imperialism. And number 5 is the assassination. I'm going to give you those definitions in just a second. All right, so the definitions. I'll get them all down for you. Militarism, the M. Militarism is the glorification for the military. It also measures a country's preparedness for war. So what's happening prior to 1914 is that all the countries of Europe are building up their weapons. England sees that Germany is building up their army, so England is going to build up their army. France is going to build up its army. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire is going to build up its army. It's very similar to the United States building up their nuclear arsenal. The United States doesn't want to use a nuclear bomb or nuclear weapons, but it will use it if necessary. The next thing are alliances, and we're going to go into a little bit of detail about the alliance system. Several countries made several secret treaties with other countries. And this was problematic because now instead of a small localized conflict, you're going to have a big conflict on hand. The third cause for World War I is imperialism, and we know from our previous unit that imperialism is the domination of one country over the political and cultural and economic life of another country. Also nationalism, the extreme nationalism or pride in one's home country. And then finally, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand is going to be a cause. And I'm going to go into much more detail about that. All right, so at this point, you guys should have questions number 1, 2, 3, and 4 down. If I went too fast, you can go back and you can watch this video again, or you can download the notes right onto your personal wireless device. If you have any questions, you can post them onto Edmodo. That concludes part 1 and part 2 of the Great War.